sound better.
So I've loaded up a track that I've made here. And as you can see, it's not too many tracks, not too little. It's perfect for the sake of the tutorial. We're looking into vocals, instruments, bass, drums, and all of that is separated into groups. We're gonna balance everything the way that the music genre requires it to be balanced. Because if you mix a certain song in a different way, it's gonna sound more irrelevant than it should. So static mixing prepares the things to sound the way that they should, and all from that we can add our personal touch and mixing preferences. In order to do that, we need to group things up into drums, various instruments that compile the harmony, the bass on its own, and vocals. Now, as you can see, I already did some of the job. Vocals are grouped here. We have a channel for effects, and the rest, whatever is labeled into brown, orange maybe, is going into one group that we're going to name drums. I'm gonna close this for now. We have our bass, and we'll name this bass. And the rest, for now, will go into another category. We're gonna group that too, balance it down. Now let's get a quick listen of the song. I'm gonna turn the vocals off for now. And then we have another part like that here. Then it goes back to that. I'm just play back a few of the vocals.
I got the fire, 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 baby. I'm just burning in action. Got the fire, fire, baby. I got fire in action.
So as you can hear, it is very imbalanced. A lot of the things don't sound the way that they should. The voice is a bit too high. The mixing within the voice group is totally wrong for now. It's not something that you can send out to mastering. Definitely, you have to go through the static mixing. To make a static mixing, it means that we bring the levels of every instrument to where it is supposed to be prior to any compression, equalizing, reverb, delay, and other various effects, distortion. You get the point. We need to set the balance right so everything sounds tight and it represents the genre as best as you can. Now, static mixing is a process that you have to do plenty of times to understand how it works. So I'm gonna mute the vocals for now, and I'm gonna show you the first step that you need to get. Now, it's important that you set the main element right. If you set the main element right, first you have to understand who is the leader of the track. It might be the bass, it might be the vocal, it might be the kick drum, it might be all the drums. You have to understand who is the leader and mix around that. Say for pop music, let's say Adele. The main element is the voice, and we have to complement the voice, so everything goes around it. We don't fight over the voice. In hip hop music, the main element is the bass and the drums, the bounce. So it's the tightening of kick and bass. So let's first find who is the leader of that track and mix around that. Static mixing happens when we have the leader and then we balance everything around that to complement it. In this genre, we're looking for the kick drum, which sounds like that. So let's set this right, and the best way to set it right is to look at your master around -12. -6 to -12 is a good starting point to set your kick drum. Gonna go in and I'm going to roughly balancing everything around the kick. Now, once you set your kick drum to around 6 to -12, we move on to the next element, which is the snare. And we want it to sound almost the same, but a little softer than the kick in terms of loudness. See here, it's slightly louder than the kick. Around -3.5 decibels is working just fine. Now we're going to our next element, which is a clap under the snare. We just put it under the snare to make it fill up the space. It's not something that you want to put here. In a different genre, you might want to do the same. Bruno Mars does that. They put the clap very high and it almost hides the snare. The snare works in the background. It's more for funk music. You would go with something like that. But here we want it under. You hear the difference? The click of that specific snare is in the in the front, so you get the tone from that instrument. Next element. Now this is a loop. It already sounds good. I'm just gonna crank it up a little bit. Okay, again, an example. In pop music, you want this in the background, like that. Commercial pop music uses a lot of loops and very soft. Rock music has them very high. And it's more industrial sounds. So you get the point. Each genre has this commonalities that they share, and you have to follow that in static mixing. So I'm gonna go a little bit around to 1.5. Around there. Let's go with this one. We have a few offline samples for now. It's a very old project, but we'll still get the job perfectly done. Now let's audition the whole group together. Next thing, we put our bass. You see no plugins anywhere, nothing on the kick, nothing on the snare, nothing. It needs to be completely blank. This is just a low pass filter that I use. That's almost sound designing. We don't mind about this now. Now the bass is a little low. We need to set it a little higher. It has to make the kick sound tight. You have bass frequencies in the kick and bass frequencies in the bass that they are shared. And when you go over and when you mix those two together, the bass frequencies need to sound almost the same, but the kick has almost they need to sound very close together. No one be way above the other. So the bass frequencies of the bass, we can check it out right here. I will solo it. And here's the bass frequency of the kick. You can hear like the muddiness in the kick and the muddiness in the bass. We'll have to cut that out later. But for now, what we do is we set it up to be almost the same. The bass frequencies, not the treble. So this needs to go a little softer right here. Now let's audition the drum group with the bass together. And let me bring back this instrument now. This is a very background instrument. Sounds right about there. An example, pop music would have that high. Around there. One is soft. It's because it's not a lead instrument. This is a more lead instrument. And we want this high. We don't want to go too high with that. Almost there. And we have another instrument here, which is the bells. Now, both in pop music, trap music, hip hop music, dancehall music, the bells go soft. Now this is a little bit too soft. I will go a little bit higher. Yeah, right there. It's a background instrument. And I also have this loop, which complements everything. Could throw it in our drum group, because it works there. And we'll mix it in with the rest of the drums. And this is a very, check this out. That would be trap music. Music or more African or more tribal kind of sounds. We want those loops a little bit low and we want a lot of them. We don't want to overpower any of the other elements. And that's because the kick is the leader. We have to complement it and make it be present every time it hits and not be masked by other elements. The other elements are complementing the kick. So let me just jump into the vocals now. I will first mix the group within itself. That's what static mixing is.
I got the fire, 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 baby.
And I will delete all of the effects. Those are just for reference purposes. Turn this off for now. So we have this raw vocal.
I got the fire, 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 baby. I'm just.
And I'm gonna set the lead vocal properly for the rest of the instrumental.
Fire, 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 baby. I'm just burning in action.
Okay, so this is too loud. So I'm gonna mix the whole group lower.
Fire, 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 baby. I'm just burning in action. Got the fire, fire, baby.
A nice way to set your vocals nicely is to find the plosives, like the P's, the T's, the G's, everything plosive.
Fire, 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 baby.
And set it to about the same level as your snare and kick, a little bit slightly lower or in between them. If you have a very big difference between the kick and the snare, what you need to do is set the plosives in between. If you have a solid difference as we do have now, that they sound around the same, you should set it a little lower.